So obviously Papua New Guinea is known for being pretty violent, quite an unstable place, pretty scary place. A lot of things there get settled with a machete, and there's, we'd already witnessed along the way mass murders and some pretty scary intertribal fighting. But we got to the headwater of this river that we wanted to...
The Laki
Camo River that we wanted to ascend down to the south coast. And at the village, I can't remember the village's name.
It was Bulldog Village. So it was like there's a load of old World War II trails, one of which is called the Bulldog Track, where they basically, the Japanese in the Second World War took the northern half of the island over, and the Aussies were doing this crazy guerrilla warfare against a far superior numerically enemy, and they were doing taking them to pieces. But in order to resupply them, the Aussie army had to basically blow holes through mountains and all sorts to get the supply from the south coast up to where all the fighting was happening. So one of these old trails is called the Bulldog Trail, which kind of ends at the Laki Camo, or begins at the Laki Camo River. So we had followed that on part of the journey. A lot of it's been reclaimed by the jungle now, but it's still very interesting to go down. And we reached this where the old camp was, where a lot of the supplies had ran through. And now it's just a village just full of the locals there. And we met a guy called Simon, who was a betel nut salesman. And betel nut out there is it's like the drug of choice. Everybody is on betel nut. It's like a stimulant. It's a little bit like speed, I think. And instead of what we do over here, we drink tea or coffee. When we meet each other, they all just sit around and chew betel nut, and the addicts get off their head on it. Gives them a bright red grin. It makes their teeth go all red. And makes it, if they eat too much, it makes their teeth fall out, and they all go a bit twitchy on it.
Yeah, it makes them look pretty scary.
So he had a boat load of this betel nut, and so we were like, can we just hire your boat and we'll just row it down the river? And he didn't want to let us do it because a couple of white guys on a river with all his betel nut on a river that's notorious for pirates. So we bartered with him, ended up giving him some money to let us paddle down the river. It's a fairly interesting little journey,
obviously we paddled his little boat full of betel nut down this Laki Camo River, and every now and then he would the more we went down the river, the more he would divulge just how dangerous it was, until he was telling stories of, yesterday there was a boat here of some people, now they've been killed because of the pirates, going down the river. And every now and then he'd you could tell he'd be a bit panicked, and he'd say to us to paddle over, and we'd paddle into sort of an inlet, and we'd hear a motorboat go past, and he'd say, pirates, pirates. And so before, and then it's dawned on us that this waterway is it's like a highway for this betel nut, this drugs, and it's pretty much owned by these pirate dudes.
Yeah, rascals on the water.
Yeah, this gang. So you got us two white dudes paddling this boat full of drugs.
It was so funny. It was so funny because we had Simon, who was just an odd character in himself. Hennis, a local that we'd stayed with from the mountains, who was just constantly stoned, just sat on the front of the boat with these two locals just off their head, and then Simon's two 8-year-old twins, and they were just sat there and they were singing the whole way, and we were like, this is just bizarre, odd, and we're just dodging between pirates going up and down this river. Yeah.
And we eventually made it to a place called Tarapa, which was the south coast village on the south coast, and we stopped there and we stayed with, I think he was a policeman, and he said, I remember saying, I'm just going to go and use the sat phone to phone home to say that we've made it safe, and he said, yeah, that's fine, but just don't go anywhere, just stay by the house. So I thought, fine. So I took the sat phone down his little bamboo stair. You know, it's just a bush built hut. And I walked sort of 50 metres from his house to just use the phone. And I turned round and he was stood there, big dude with his red teeth, and he said, "I told you don't go anywhere because you'll get killed." And I was like, "Oh, you mean literally nowhere?" Yeah. And he was like, "Yeah, go back to the house."
Yeah,
like,
and like
it was so dangerous
in that settlement, like when we came into that house, like Simon's wife was like, she was chatting and she was laughing about something, and I kept her ear going, "We chop them up," and like I was asking like Simon like what's she laughing about, and he's like, "Oh, it is quite funny. These rascal boys came to the shop today and they tried to rob the owner, and the owner throw a tin of tuna at one and knock him out, and then all the villagers come and they chop him up." So like a couple of hours before we come in this village, like some young like rascal had just been hacked to death by the villagers, and they were all sat around chatting like fairly amicably, like just laughing about it. Yeah. So
that was our sort of last bit of the Papua New Guinea expedition, and it sums up a little bit how psychologically draining that expedition was, because I could not rest and relax at all. I was constantly on edge that something was going to happen to us there. So when we got to the airport and we were about to fly home, I was pretty chuffed that it was done and dusted, really. Yeah.